Okay, perfect. Welcome. It is just to timestamp this video. It is January 4th at 11 o'clock at night. And Dylan is going to talk about a very interesting stock that I also own. Uh, Go ahead, Dylan. Go take the floor, buddy. You got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we want to bring up Summit Therapeutics because they have a catalyst event in the next few days. Um, I've owned the stock for a long time.
And the ticker, the ticker.
SMMT,
Okay.
M like M&M's, SMM like M&M's, T
Okay.
like turtle. Yeah, that stock, like I said earlier, I've been in the stock since $1.25. It's now right around $17 right now. A large percent of my portfolio is in the stock. I still think it's massively undervalued. I've actually met the CEO. I don't know if I mentioned this. Not like meet, like have dinner and like I decided to buy a stock after I realized how amazing he was, but just casually kind of through something else, disrelated work. I happened to meet him, but yeah, definitely impressed me as a nice guy and
His
very
name, his name.
Bob Duggan, Robert
Okay,
Duggan.
Bob Duggan. So you meet Bob Duggan, and tell us a little bit more about
Years
what.
ago, years ago. Yeah. Just
Okay.
left me a favorable impression. And then I heard about his earlier company after I got investing of Pharmacyclics, where the stock went from $2 to 200 and change in about a 6 year period. So that was a pretty impressive return there. So he made quite a large amount of money himself, but he made a lot of shareholders rich too. I mean, you're getting 100 bagger on a stock in like 6 years. It's gonna make a lot of happy shareholders. I mean, what do you need, 1,000x or something? What more can you ask for? So yeah, I sold that company to AbbVie and all that, and so that turned out really well. And he wasn't doing anything for a while, and then I happened to run across this company that he just shortly after you got involved in it, Summit Therapeutics, and I've been, a large majority of my net worth in there, and I'm hoping for another Pharmacyclics ride. And so far, so good. It's been really good. Now, the difference between now and Pharmacyclics is they were taking a very niche, the leukemia or whatever, bone cancer, whatever, something like that. Basically, very niche thing that only a very small, I think it was 2,000 and change people per year in the U.S. have that form of cancer. It's a very expensive treatment, and so they're able to generate a lot of revenue and with that drug because the treatment is so niche or however you say that. Anyways, so with Summit, it's a much bigger game where they're basically Keytruda, the current largest, most successful, most best-selling drug in the world, is running into a patent. I think in 2028 they're going to be patented, so they're going to be white labeled. Like no longer able to generate a huge amount of revenue and all this competition with the white label and everything with the patent ending. But so the company Merck that owns Keytruda is obviously looking for something to replace that lost revenue that's going to happen inevitably down the road. And so Summit basically has come up with a Keytruda killer, like a drug that is beating in all the trials, and so far has been doing really well. Now, all biotech companies, um, from an investor perspective, take a lot longer than you want to take. You want the stock to take off next week, but it takes years, and that's just the reality. The trials take years, and the company is dependent on the trial results, as well as financing, obviously. So there's not really any way around that time. You do have to wait that time period to make sure people do well with the drug and all that sort of stuff. Unlike the COVID vaccine, you have to test it thoroughly and make sure it's safe and all that stuff, for real. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going through as an investor, and other investors in some therapeutics are going through as well. Although the market has become more optimistic, it's still very under the full value in my opinion. So yeah, anyways, so get back to the point. There is a major catalyst event happening on a conference they're having January 8th through 10th, somewhere in that time period, presumably where they're doing the mid. There is a major study called Harmony 3 that's it's like a lot of the study data has been China only because Summit Therapeutics has bought the rights to the drug from a Chinese company called Akeso, and So this is a study involving a lot of Caucasian people. So it's proving to regulators that it doesn't only work on the Chinese population; it works on a broader, genetic variety of humans, basically, and it still has very good numbers and all that sort of stuff. So this is a very pivotal thing that, although the actual study I think ends in the early 2028, the study, this will basically give enough data to show there's better Keytruda that they'll be able to submit a FDA approval, basically an FDA request for approval, for the drug submission or whatever, with this mid 2 year data where they're competing against Keytruda and all that.
So I want to know a little bit more. What year did you get into the stock? What really got you interested in it, other than obviously you met Duggan? You told me that you were very impressed. Um, what other things got you into this stuff? Was it the drug was it the drug? Was it the company's funding? I mean, I'm talking about when you owned it, whenever you owned it. I think you owned it, what, 3 or 4 years ago? Um,
Well, I first saw it in December 2022.
so yeah, so
It's about 3 years ago,
3 years
roughly, a
ago.
little
Yeah,
over three
okay,
years ago. I didn't
okay,
buy it that time because it was a little expensive, so I waited for it to go down. So I actually got a position around like February, March, right around there in 2023,
okay.
about 3 years.
Um, that's about in the $1.50 range. So you meet Duggan before this, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I met
yeah,
Duggan in like 2006, I think,
I got you. Okay, okay.
years
So
ago.
um the only reason why I'm asking this is because obviously you obviously felt more compelled for this stock, right? I guess other than Duggan, and I guess I imagine the drug, you know what I mean, obviously, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Um, was there anything else that kind of compelled you to buy it at that time? Going back, let's go back in a time machine.
Yeah, like if you look at what was going on in my head back then,
Yeah,
was so the news came out, the stock was around a little under $1, and the price shot up temporarily within about a week. It was about $5. And there's about 230 odd million shares out at the time. So the market cap was, decent, a few billion. And if you did a discount cash flow analysis of that drug replacing Keytruda, which was the original, that was inferred, if not directly communicated, and very easy to um, see, even if it wasn't directly communicated in the press releases, just based off of looking at all the information. That this drug was currently being tried to get approved at this time in the Chinese market for lung cancer cure, and they were testing it against Keytruda, I think, at the time, or other, you know, um, standard of care, that they were using at that time, and it was beating them. And so the numbers look good. And Duggan had spent out of his own pocket $500 million to get the rights to that drug. So he clearly thought that, now his net worth is about 3 billion. So he's putting a significant amount of his net worth at risk. A, trusting the company, and B, trusting that their drug is gonna, make him some money, basically. He
yeah. So
didn't.
pro tip, I'm going to stop you right there, Joe. Pro tip to all the people who are listening, and I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning many, many times. We very much like when insiders are buying. And that's because, again, we're going to repeat this. Only time an insider buys is because they think the price will go.
Up.
So
A
again,
lot.
so go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dylan. I figured that was a good kind of moment to kind of put on to kind of interrupt you. But go ahead with what you were doing.
Sure. So he had put $500 million, and if you did a discount cash flow analysis, and you looked at this beating Keytruda, the stock would be worth about maybe roughly $300 a share. A lot of assumptions there, but in that range, somewhere between $200 and $500 a share, and it was trading currently for around $5. So it's massively underpriced, and again, it was drifting down. So this is really because you had to wait for the Chinese data to come out and Chinese to get approved, and then the data come over here. And actually, Bob Duggan had said pretty early on that the FDA had agreed to skip phase 1 and phase 2 trials and go straight to phase 3 for this drug because of all the data that they took from that the Akeso was using. I believe this is, as far as I understand, it was globally recognized, meaning they were not only doing the Chinese standards, and maybe they are globally accepted or not, probably not. And they were doing the trials to result that any global, the European EMA or whatever, the Japanese version of the FDA, they would all basically globally recognize this data they were tracking as legitimately accurate data to use and to be trustworthy. So that was important to know that this company was going to skip phase 1 and 2. So you're shaving off years off your product line. It's already being used in China, being used successfully. Now, I'm not a total like genius expert on all drugs and genetic varieties, but like if it's working in Chinese humans, I think the probability of it not working in other humans is minuscule. Maybe minuscule is an exaggeration, but like quite small. Like more likely than not, like if you're not going to have some massive increase of allergies with Caucasians as opposed to Chinese. I just don't. There's no historical precedence for that I'm aware of. So I think it's a very low probability. So you're basically betting that it's the number's going to continue. It's going to transfer to the other types of populations, Caucasian and whatever, and then they're going to do their end of deal. They're not going to get tariff. Like nothing crazy is going to happen, and then you have this 100x 100 bagger basically, as long as you're willing to wait like the 4 years or whatever for all the trials to happen in the US. And so Kesso couldn't really run trials in the US, and with the FDA approval you get a lot of countries that will just sort of automatically sign off on it. So it's a good way for them they have a revenue sharing agreement with Summit. It puts them in the limelight because there's a million biotechs in China. It sort of puts them in the limelight as like, we're special. We have this partner in the US getting us FDA approval. It's getting our drug globally used and everything. They're getting revenue from that, capped. So it's capped at around $5 billion. And it's Summit is able to do basically the rest of the world, just not the China and sort of Asian market. That's the their area of the market, but the Summit is taking pretty much the rest of the world, Africa, US, Europe, Japan, all over. So yeah, that's the basic thing, was that basically the interest me was basically looking at that as a pretty high probability bet, and more the fact, I guess, sorry, to finish the thought. So you're looking to doing discount cash flow analysis, you're getting a range of like around $300 a share. Let's just say an average the shares trading for $5. You have about a, say, 3 to 5 year timeline, let's just say, unless you count like maybe marketing and sales, maybe like a 7-year timeline, something like that. You have a 100 bagger, assuming it happens in a pretty high probability bet. The insiders heavily invested. To give you about his net worth.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
Because this was really kind of shocking to me. Can you say the percentages on, again, you can share your screen if you want, but I'm sure you know these numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just to show the crowd. You don't have to, Dylan, but I mean.
Yeah, I'm not set up for that, so let's just keep talking.
Okay. So let's do numbers. So what percentage does Duggan actually own?
Duggan and his wife own like the high 80s%
Right.
of the company. So it's almost a private company.
Yeah, and then institutional investors were what? I think I remember
13%, I think.
Yeah, something like
11%.
Yeah. Go ahead. I just wanted to make sure you got that little.
Yeah, it's a very unusual publicly traded company, because he bought the majority of it when they were in the dumps. They were doing a whole antibiotic thing, and that totally failed and bombed out and fizzled out. He bought a bunch of the company, got on the board, CEO, everything, and sort of like took over the company, returned the ship this way, and it's been basically a different company, although it's been around for like 20 years. It's a completely reborn company in the last few years. So yeah, now to go back on track here, the main thing was that I was seeing a major disconnect in the value and the probability of it getting to that value and what the market was assigning to it. Probably due to the fact that A, biotechs lose money. B, it was a super small market cap. There was no analyst following it. C, mostly retail was involved, and retail generally has a short time horizon. So if you're like, yeah, you're invested in the stock, you're gonna make 100 bagger in 4 years, and like, I want 100 bagger tomorrow, like let's go find that, like it's sort of like a dumb money basically. So that all kind of led to my basically having that edge as far as I'm concerned is seeing that and capitalizing on that opportunity. Not as much as I would have, or had I gone back in time, I would have more heavily invested it and all that sort of stuff. But certainly capitalized more than a great number of people, majority of humans on Earth. I bought a pretty sizable chunk back then, and it's done really well since then. So that was the main thing that interested me, was basically the mispricing of what I considered a fair range of the true value. And even now, I still think the true value. Now they issued a lot more shares now, so it's about a billion shit, rough, not billion, about 800 million, roughly 800 million shares outstanding. And so now that brings the true value of the shares obviously down. It's more like 100 plus, optimistic 50 if you're being pretty conservative, thinking it's going to take part of the market and kind of like sort of struggle and stuff. But that's obviously a pretty decent jump from 17 where it is now. And obviously there's a catalyst event, and there's another catalyst later in the year for another trial. And so yeah, I'm hoping the market gets super optimistic after this trial data comes out and things are looking good, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so here's my question to you is, obviously the stock's kind of been a little bit sideways for the last year or so, basically, let's just call it flat. Um, I did see some insider buying, I'm looking at it, that Duggan, Robert Duggan on 10, I know you probably don't have this in front of you, maybe you probably remember, on 10/21/2025, he had bought 26,000 shares at 1878. You know what I mean? To kind of up his share. So, and a couple of people here. If I could pronounce the name, Makam Zhang.
And his wife, yeah,
Yep,
Zanganon or whatever,
yep,
Iranian lady, yeah.
yep. It's looking to me that they bought quite a bit on that particular day. I guess where I want to kind of get on today, which is January 4th, 2026. Um, what are your goals for the stock right now for the people? Obviously, you're in at a very low price point, and from my understanding, you do trade it. Which I frankly don't trade stocks.
Yeah, we're quite
But
different in that sense.
we're
Yeah.
different in that. We'll get in that in another episode. But for the listeners out there who are like, I just heard of Summit. It's at what is 17 something, 1750. Let's just say 1750 ish. Um, what's the long story short? What's the price target? Are you waiting for an entry point right now if you're just going in? And where do you see the stock of the year? There's three questions, compound, but
Yeah. I mean, I have additional money that I'd like to put into it, and I'm not seeing a super pessimistic market where it gets down to like that floor of like 16, where it's sort of trading. And I consider that to be a waiting market, meaning they consider that a sort of like it's either going to go up and go up to true value or go down and be, virtually worthless. So the market sort of picked that spot. And at first I thought it was manipulation when it was going down earlier, but it does seem to be the market's a little bit pessimistic on it, passing its trials and all that stuff. And I think the way to make a lot of money is you have to do your research, do your homework, do really well. But the market doesn't always get things right, and you can just look at a price chart where something goes crazy, and that just tells you right there the market totally didn't get that. Like with the tariff tantrums, where the market totally crashed. Like me and Chris were sitting there like thinking that doesn't make any sense. Things are going to be fine, but the market was still freaking out on something that wasn't really legitimate to freak out on, and it wasn't really worthy of that crash, but it still happened. So you may as well take opportunities, take these opportunities, so just buy when the market gives you a great deal, and sell if they want to give you a fortune, because the market is not always right, and could prove that pretty casually.
so I guess two questions again. Is the market have this price correctly at 1750 today? And let's say I'm Joe Brown or Jill Brown. If I let's see what I did there. But if I'm Jill Brown, do I put in fresh money today, or do you wait for an entry point? Um, or what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not putting any money in because it hasn't hit a low. So I like to do
So
market
no.
timing with my fundamental analysis. So I have money to put in now, and I'm just waiting, and I'm not going to put into it if it doesn't ever hit a low. If it doesn't, if it has this thing, and I think it will be pretty positive. But I thought it was going to be pretty positive earlier in the year too, and then later in the year, different shares, and the market really hasn't been very impressed. So I might have to wait until they start generating revenue in down the road in a few years, and before the market actually literally believes that they're or the FDA approval, whatever point where the market's like, oh my God, this is actually like, let me do some DCF analysis and see what this is worth. And then it, just skyrockets up. And I'm a patient guy. I'm not really in any hurry. I don't touch my investment account. It just sits there and does its thing. So really, I don't mind the money. Obviously I prefer to make more money or whatever, but if I knew of something that was like Chris, I'm pretty agnostic. I really don't care. If I had known gold was going to double, I would have, jumped ship on Summit and gotten gold and rode that wave and then come back to Summit, this year or whatever, because gold had a phenomenal year last year. But I just didn't know that. I mean, I bought the gold, but I bought it way early. It was hardly moving back then. To me, it was obvious then, but it's taken a while before the market actually kind of saw the trade. So,
So what?
much like the Big Short.
Are you telling the audience to kind of wait a little bit before you put fresh money in for some
Well,
of
I'm
that?
not going to recommend anyone buy or sell anything, obviously, but I'm saying with my own money, I plan on exiting um, much higher than it is now. I don't want to give a precise price, but exiting much higher than it is now, much closer to fair value, and only to enter if it came like to the low of its current range. So I would not put the new money in now. No.
Yeah, okay. So for me, I mean, I own a very small position on it. When I saw that Duggan and his wife, thanks for letting me know that was his wife. I wasn't sure that was a board member or whoever.
Yeah, they recently married. Yeah.
Yeah. Once they bought on October 21st of that entry point, my entry point was, I think, maybe $1 or so cheaper than that. So, I've basically been flat, what I mean, for the last little bit. Um, I kind of do believe in their story. I think the only thing that worries me a little bit is that they're well capitalized from what I remember, but they are burning through a lot more debt now than they were before, at least. Is that
A lot more cash, you mean?
cash?
They have that.
Yeah, yeah, a lot more cash. Their cash burn is a lot is a lot. So that is a little bit concerning for me, and I mean that's why I definitely have my eye on. In fact, do you know why are they burning through more cash now than before? I mean,
Yeah, they're basically ramping up. They're hiring new positions. So everyone is assuming they're going to sell it to a big pharma, and that's even if you're not even focusing on the money and you're just focusing on helping as many patients. The big farmers already have the plants, they have everything. It's really the fastest way to get to market. Um, Summit has publicly said they're not doing that, and they are actively hiring people to do it all in house. So I I think most investors think that Bob is just getting a better negotiating position because why would you build another Walmart next to a Walmart? Like why would you do all that work when it's already all done? So like what value could you add? Like how could you make it better? So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to be bad to be said about Big Pharma for sure. But in terms of like just distribution and all this sort of stuff, I don't know. I don't really, other than a negotiating position, just like Trump with the tariffs, where he's just negotiating. Um, I don't know that it makes sense for him to try and build up to a big pharma size where he's sales agents in all major cities in the US and Europe and and all this sort of stuff that he's sort of like mouth is moving, he's saying he's doing, and he's hiring new positions, but it doesn't totally make sense. So I'm not sure where he's going with that. They're also paying for more phase 3 trials with they're basically rolling the dice heavily on Summit, continue to be successful. So they're paying for more trials with other types of cancer happening. And then they're also doing the kind of a newer thing now where they're doing a primary drug and then they're adding additional sort of like side drugs to make it stronger and stuff like that, ADCs or whatever they call them. So they're also doing stuff like that. I don't, as far as I know, they're not paying for any of that stuff. The companies that are developing those ADCs are paying for that stuff, but that is also happening. They're kind of like trying to get approved for as many indications, and that's sort of the play. And then I guess supposedly trying to do it all in-house. So I am not sure if I believe that. That's what at least is publicly being said and this sort of stuff. So I mean, it's like that's a 10-year thing, I would think. I'm no expert on how to get to a big pharma, but like from what I've seen, like with Vertex, for example, and other companies that sort of gone to like sort of the big pharma level, it's a long game, and he's already 80, Duggan's already 80. So I don't know that totally makes sense except for a negotiating position.
Mm,
I
okay.
mean, the manufacturing is getting done in China. It's getting shipped over here. So all he needs, I guess, is some kind of a storage and distribution, or however that distribution and sales sort of network happens. I guess it's a little um, lighter than a manufacturing process here, and then shipping and whatever. But like, there is some logistics and sales and all sorts of stuff that has to happen here. Um, Maybe he just does that drug. Maybe it is possible for him to have his own sort of put it all under one roof, so to speak. So I guess it's possible. We'll see.
All right.
But that's expanding. The spending is very like expected in my from what I understand what the company's doing. Also, this is very very not a big deal to me.
Okay. I'm looking over here at analysts, and you can't always look at analysts, but I do like to get them to have some type of I guess it depends on what analyst is good, but let's just take up to not drag you in the forest here. Um, HC Wainwright, JPM Securities, Citigroup, those are pretty good. They all have the latest rating as a buy. HC Wainwright has a $50, JPM Securities $40, Citigroup is $40 by the end of the year. So
There's one they gave like 131 recently, which is kind of wild.
yeah, yeah. So
Cantor, I think Cantor something.
yeah. I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's
Yeah. This is one out of whatever. So
yeah, yeah. And then there's a couple. There's one that I've never Barclays. Yeah, Barclays has it as an $18 hold. You know what I mean? That's one of the few where the analysts have that as. But so there's your target. So a widespread of. Oh no, there is somebody conservative city legacy targets as a low of $7. But again, I don't like to go too much into it because you got so many analysts out there. But most of the reputable ones have this as a you know $30 to $40 stock.
yeah, if you just basically like so the way biotech stocks are priced is like, okay, what is it worth if it's approved? And then what's the probability of that getting approved? And if you just do sort of like basic um probability analysis for a phase three approval, I think is around 15% or something like that. But if you add in the I haven't actually added this in, but if you add in like former approvals, I'm sure that 50% goes a lot higher, like meaning like Europe FDA or the EMA has already approved it. What's the probability that the phase three is going to be approved in the FDA? Like it's like I would assume it's in the 80s range. I haven't actually checked that, but I'm assuming. I mean, you're literally like, does water, go downhill in Europe and America? Like, you know what I mean? Like, unless there's a lot more political thing than I am aware of, which it's I mean, I'm almost certain there's some, but does it get in the way of them saying, water doesn't go downhill? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, especially considering that Duggan should be able to deal with that based off his prior track record in his earlier history, even if they do have some sort of political, ring kissing, whatever the hell. I'm assuming he's dealt with that before, this earlier company, and he knows the ropes.
Yeah. The other thing is I don't know about this, putting you on the spot. Um, Remember how we talked about most of the data came from China? Um, does
So
the
far, yes.
FDA, pardon me?
So far, yes.
So
Like the
far, yeah, yeah. Does the
final data,
FDA
yeah.
accept that are there any other precedents for any other companies that will accept the data that from China and then kind of transfer it over to the US?
No, none. And this is not gonna the main thing that would happen was the phase 1 and phase 2 trial was accepted. The FDA probably will never accept phase 3 trial data from China. I don't know that, maybe in 100 years or something when life's completely different. But assuming the typical world now, I don't know that the FDA will ever approve something just based off of the phase 3 trial data on the FDA. So you're paying for their own phase 3 trial data here and running those tests, running those full trials and everything. So it's just the phase 1 and phase 2 that was approved that sped up the process a lot here.
Okay. The other thing is after the January Catalyst event, what's the calendar looking back at? I think it's let me see. Do you know what the next Catalyst event would be after that?
Yeah, it's second
Yeah,
half of the year. There's
yeah,
another major trial data that's coming out there the year after. There's going to be more trial data as they start trials and do more trials and other cancer things. But in terms of the major answer question for the market is, are they going to get FDA approval for at least their first indication of the lung cancer, and when?
right.
So is the overall survival data going to be statistically significant in this next data release, which it probably will be. That's where the number is headed, but did it cross that line? Probably, but we don't know for sure. There's also a risk in that this is a one drug company. This is not a company that has 12 things varying between phase 1 and phase 3, and most of the net worth of the company is not tied up in one drug or whatever. But this is certainly has more risk than Walmart or something.
Uh, I guess that's my next question. Would you call this, say, on a scale of 1 to 10 and speculative, with 10 being super speculative, 1 being cash, I guess. But no,
Gold.
well, you know what I mean. But yeah, whatever. Um, what would you rate this as speculative compared? Let's first of all compare it to the market, and then we'll compare it to other biotech stocks.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you put it just on that 1 to 10 scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Off the top of my head, I would say roughly a 5 or something, because having gold in your asset, like in physical gold in your asset, such a high probability, like secure bet. Maybe you could do more like a 3 or whatever. But if you leverage that, then obviously you're getting way more speculative.
Yeah, no leverage. No, no, no.
Yeah,
The
you're
leverage.
just literally holding, and you're
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
mm, holding for the likely beneficial market response or FD approval or cash flow, whatever sort of. You have a couple different ways you can play this. You can play it for the market getting optimistic and then just sell on the good news and the hype and the CNBC and all that. You could hold it till the cash flow starts coming in, and they're returning cash to shareholders via buybacks or dividends. There's a lot of ways to play it, and you're just banking on that track record of this person and the incentive with all his money. He gets almost no salary, so he has most of the incentive is in the owning the company and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, somewhere between 3 and 5, I would say, in terms of speculation. And again, like, yeah, the S&P 500 is maybe like a 3. So you're just really not going to have a major loss there.
So you're putting us at a 5? Is that kind of safe? Or for
Somewhere
you?
between 3. Let's just round it up. Let's just go in the middle and say 4.
Okay, 4.
Speculative.
Now how would it compare to other? Okay, that's just the market. Hopefully I phrased my question correctly. Now, what about compared to other biotech stocks like what we talked about last week?
Calc, CALC.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can never pronounce the name.
Yeah, their funding is locked and loaded, self-funded, basically. All the clinical data looks good. They're close to getting it. So I feel like compared to a regular biotech, other biotechs are probably in the 7 on speculation, generally speaking. No cash flow. How much are they going to dilute you when they get more? Is there any meaningful data here? If there is, has it already been priced in? Like there's a lot of um yeah, a lot of risk in both biotech. This is significantly de-risked.
Okay, so you'd rate this. So you said CL. I just want to make sure I'm getting you right. CL7, CLC, pardon me, would be like a 7, and this would be obviously be less risky than that. I think that's what
Yeah,
you're
like a
trying to say.
4, I
But
would
what
say.
what
Yeah,
would the number? You say 4?
4.
Okay, perfect. So okay, just trying to get everybody's risk tolerance. Now, actually, I could bring this up in the next 10 minutes. How and I guess I'll kind of take the floor from you a little bit, unless you want to add something else about
No, go
science.
ahead.
Okay,
I'm only
what
two
I do
minutes
want to
left.
say
Yeah.
is to find out somebody's risk tolerance. I learned this trick from somebody we went to school with. I thought it was kind of a genius move. And to find somebody else's risk tolerance is, let's take all your assets, Dylan, that you own, everything, your house, your furniture, your car, your stocks, etc. Right? Um, Obviously, nobody wants to lose money, right? Obviously, that's a big thing. So if I were to put that all in one pot, and I don't want to know the number, I don't want to know the number. Let's assume that number. I don't want to know the number, but I'm just going to throw a number out there. Let's assume it was $1 million. Out of that $1 million, right? How much would you be comfortable losing? Nobody wants to lose any. How much of that $1 million would you be comfortable losing? It's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I have a pretty high risk tolerance, so I'm comfortable losing about 50 to 70%.
Okay. So some
Or
people are
risking.
100% would
Risking would
be,
be how I
yeah,
would phrase it,
yeah.
but
Some
yeah.
people would say 100%, you know what I mean? So that would mean, you put it all in stocks or all even in risk one stock. 50 to 60%, right? You're probably looking at like 50 to 60% stock right off the bat, and then, maybe some gold, you know what I mean, some bonds or et cetera. The rest of that 40, you can split it up into whatever asset class you have. So that's normally what I see as a risk tolerance, kind of what your risk tolerance in your mind is. And I don't know what you think about that, but yeah, it's a good way to find somebody else's kind of what they what they feel comfortable with, with their asset.
Yeah, makes sense.
So back to Summit, we got about 8 minutes to kind of put your bow
It says
on
less than a
some.
minute for me.
Oh, it says only a minute for you?
Less than a minute, it says, yeah.
Oh, okay. Anything else you want to say about Summit at all?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
Okay, cool. Um, Thank you so much, everybody, for doing for staying with us. We covered a lot of ground today. Next week we're gonna have something. Probably we're gonna have something very exciting for you guys next week. I will say this: we do have our eyes on the Venezuela situation. At least I do. In case anything does happen, who knows? We may make a special broadcast if the market ends up doing something crazy like it did last year. I wouldn't mind doing that to kind of see where things go. The futures don't look like that. Hold on, let me see what the futures